Hi BookTube, welcome back to a rather delayed Friday Reads. I was going to film a video yesterday, but the weather just kind of turned really nasty really fast, and we had quite a storm. It was raining so hard that at one point I heard water running in the basement. And yes, we did have water in the basement. When I went outside to investigate what was going on, there was literally a waterfall coming from our roof in the backyard, pouring straight into our basement steps. Water was this deep. It was just so much coming in at once, and then it started to pour under the door. So that was interesting. So needless to say, my job this morning was to clean out the gutters. I'm glad I could reach it from the ladder because I just can't get myself to transition from the ladder onto the roof. Once I'm on the roof, I'm fine, but I have a hard time getting off the ladder, and I just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it today. So I was able to reach in and pull out a bunch of debris, and I think all's good now. But lucky we didn't have any water damage inside because we have a drain kind of immediately past the door once you're in there on the tile, and it just went right into the drain. So could have been a lot worse, but all's well that ends well. But speaking of water, it's kind of the theme of one of the books I recently finished. As I said in my previous video, I wanted to read more diversely, and so I was looking for books either by black authors, or in this particular case also, besides being a black author, I wanted someone who was LGBTQ, because there's also Pride Month right now, so I really wanted to read something for Pride Month. So I found The Best of Both Worlds in a novella called The Deep by River Solomon. River Solomon identifies as non-binary, and this particular novella is full of all sorts of queer representation besides non-binary. There's also polyamory, there's asexuality, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's a very short book, but it deals a lot with painful memories. We have a race of beings that live underwater called the Wajinru. They are descendants of pregnant African slave women that were either thrown overboard by their captors or jumped overboard to try and escape, but sadly drowned. The babies were able to be born and were miraculously able to breathe underwater, and eventually became the Wajinru race, a mermaid-like race. They refer to land beings as two legs. But their history is extremely painful to remember where they came from in the past. So in order to kind of protect the people of the Wajinru race, they have one person who holds all their memories, called the historian. And they are sort of kind of trapped within those memories, almost pushing out their own lives. So they don't really almost have their own sense of being. And Yetu, our main character, is the historian. She never asked to be that particular, or volunteered for that job of holding all the memories of the race. But I forget how often it happens, but there's a ceremony where the historian relinquishes the memories to the Wajinru for them to experience them for a short period of time, and then they absorb all the memories back again, and the people are free from that kind of horrible past. And during one event, when Yetu is destined to kind of relinquish the memories, she sort of rebels and doesn't want them back. And it's sort of a story of kind of finding herself, exploring who it is to be her own person, and kind of, I found it very, very deeply moving. I love the queer representation within it, and her search for love in herself, and also her place in her society, and you know, what it meant to hold those memories. Editing Sue here, interrupting. One of the things I forgot to mention about The Deep is that it reminded me a little bit of The Giver by Lois Lowry, in terms of the whole thing with the memories, and how like one person is the holder of the memories of the people. You know, here you have the historian, but in The Giver you had the receiver, Jonas, who received the memories from the giver of, you know, the people and stuff. And I hadn't heard anybody else like really talk about that or delve into that, but I just thought it was it just kept making me think back to that book and stuff. So anyway, back to the video. But it was very well written, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to reading. There's another book written by River Solomon. I don't remember the whole title, but there's something with ghosts in it, but it's sort of a sci-fi book. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out. The other audiobook I listened to was All Systems Red. It's book 1 in the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. Now, I first heard about this particular series by Vipka at One Book One Review, and she spoke really highly of it, and I finally got around to listening to book 1. I really enjoyed it. It seems like it's setting the pace for the rest of the series, so it was slightly a little underwhelming. But I see a lot of potential in like the character and the way it's written, because it's written from the first person point of view of a sort of android, partial human, partial android robot called a sec unit. He refers to himself as Murderbot, and it's quite a character. There's a lot of humor within this, kind of sarcastic, but it's set, like I said, in the future, where you have these exploratory teams that go to visit other planets, do mining and stuff like that, and they are required to have a government kind of security robot with them, a sec unit. And this one particular team ends up with Murderbot, and they all are supposed to have this sort of a government control thing that restricts what they're allowed to do, but Murderbot's sort of hacked into his own systems, and he's kind of got free reign of whatever he wants to do, but he has no intention of like harming the people he works with. He doesn't really care all that much about them anyway. He doesn't want to have any personal involvement with them. Just wants to go about doing his job and then kind of like chill out and watch entertainment TV, which he's downloaded into his systems. He's thoroughly addicted to it, which I thought that was hilarious. But he's almost like introverted in terms of like not wanting to be around people or talk to people or have them look at him. If you see the cover of the book, you see he's got this armor. He feels very safe within the armor. It was a really intriguing look at this character, and I'm curious to see where the rest of the story, kind of how it develops and how this character develops, being not quite human. But I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out and see. But I wish it was a little bit more interesting. There's a bit of a mystery within the story where there's another mission that's kind of suddenly gone quiet and they don't hear from them and they're wondering what's going on, so they kind of go investigate and find some horrific things have happened. So there's a little bit of conspiracy thing kind of going on. But yeah, I enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to kind of checking out the rest of it. Another book that I finished recently was Early Riser by Jasper Fforde. I didn't read this, like I said, this copy. I kind of read it off my Kindle because this is just a hefty book. But I've always been a really big fan of Jasper Fforde's books. He's just got really unique, almost indescribable plots. They're just super clever. This particular one is set in a kind of alternate history of Wales, where most of his books seem to be set. He seems to be fascinated with Wales. But in this particular one, the winters have turned really harsh, and the human population, in order to survive, kind of hibernates their way through winter. So they have to like stockpile up on food and just really like beef up, just like a bear, They have to pack on the pounds because they're going to be living off of that, their fat storage. So comfort food is like the big thing. And we follow our one character named Charlie Worthing. He is going to be a winter council for the first time, which means he will be staying awake during the winter. And it'll be his job to kind of look after the sleepers. There are sort of several winter councils. They look after different sectors. The people stay in these things called dormitoriums, and there's all different levels and or sleep and different equipment, and there's an extensive library, basement entrance, promenade, all sorts of things. But for the most part, they are asleep. There's all sorts of weird, curious creatures within it. You have the night walkers, which are basically people that upon waking are somewhat brain dead. They are almost like zombies, and they will feed off people unless you keep them fed on regular food and stuff like that. And they usually end up either being repurposed to do menial labor, or they are farmed out, kind of gruesome, farmed out for body parts in case people need a replacement part or something like that. It's kind of gruesome, but our character here, Charlie, this is like I said, it's his first winter. He's very inexperienced. He gets caught up in all sorts of weird controversy. He gets stuck out in Sector 12, which is like where they never send the newbies. They're always like left indoors and doing paperwork and stuff. And suddenly he's like in the thick of things. It's exceedingly dangerous to be caught outside without the proper equipment. You could freeze instantly. In fact, in the stories, sometimes that's used as a punishment, kind of like a execution. You were like chained up outside until you freeze to death. There are weird beings also called the winter folk that kind of wander around out there. They're kind of mythical. No one really is certain that they exist or don't. And there's one particular creature that was really interesting. I can't remember the name now, if it was the Gork or something like that. who apparently loves to fold laundry. So people will disappear, all that's left behind is their neatly folded laundry, and sometimes a thumb. It's very, like I said, very, very weird plots, but there's a lot of humor thrown in there and stuff. This particular book, though, I think got very weighed down by all the details thrown in developing the world and explaining all the little aspects of it, that it really like slowed the story down. It just kind of took you out of the action. There is some intrigue within it that I liked about this. Basically, when people hibernate, they don't dream, and because of the chemical or something that they take to put them into their hibernation sleep. So it usually prevents dreaming, but there's been this weird viral dream that's going around that people talk about, and apparently it's driving some people crazy. There's talk about a blue Buick being in the dream and some other things, and suddenly Charlie, who will be sleeping normally throughout his awake state of hibernation, while he's watching people, he still has to sleep as a regular human would. He suddenly starts experiencing this dream, and he starts to have trouble distinguishing dream from reality. So I like that aspect of it. That was really good. But like I said, the complicated plot kind of got the better of this one. It was just too much detail about all the little aspects of how this sort of world runs that I think it took me out of the story a little bit. I gave this one like about 3 stars. I think that's everything that I've currently read. That I finished reading. What I'm currently reading, I'm reading Muriel Spark's Memento Mori. This is my first Muriel Spark. I'm about almost 3/4 of the way in. It's sort of a look at the 1950s London and a group of elderly people. Some are staying in their manor homes and nursing homes, and it's sort of a look into their lives and sort of hidden secrets that kind of come up. But the main intrigue within this is someone keeps calling the various people and just leaving this message, "Remember, you must die." I find that kind of creepy, but in a way, it's almost, I started thinking about it just now before I started filming this, "Remember, you must die." It's sort of a way to also think about, if you start thinking about death, the inevitability of it, it's like, okay, well, don't waste time, start living now, kind of thing. So I don't know if it's going to be something along that line, like, remember you must die, so don't waste your life, doing evil things or whatever, or just moping about doing nothing. Go out and do something, experience life. I don't know if it's going to be along that lines, but there is sort of that sort of kind of mysterious, creepy undertones to it. But there's also a lot of humor within it. Lots of characters. I'm not really pulled into the story, though. I did kind of set it down. Maybe that was a mistake. I picked up a few other things, and they kind of pulled me out of the story a little bit. So I may have to struggle my way back into it and kind of reacquaint myself with it a little bit, maybe backtrack a bit on my reading and kind of get back into it. So, yeah, so there's that one. I was recently invited to a summer read-along on Goodreads by Dee Dee. She's Brown Girl Reading on YouTube. And the summer read-along is Chintu's Summer Read-Along. Right, Jennifer Makumbi. I'll show a picture of it up in here. So I kind of was late with Goodreads. I don't always go on the Goodreads and the notifications that pop up. I don't see them very often, and I saw that the notification had been there for quite a bit, and so I immediately downloaded the book and I started reading it because I didn't see anything anywhere that said what the time frame was. So it's apparently the book is sort of split into about, I think, 5 or 6 books within this story. And I've just finished book 1, so I'm like about 20% in. And then I saw on Goodreads it was posted, oh, we're starting in July. So I thought, crap. Okay, so I'm going to hold off on reading that, and I'm going to set aside till July starts. I've already got the first week at least done. But it's an interesting look. It's a Ugandan novel. All of the characters within it are from Uganda. There's no Europeans or white Americans or anything. So it's strictly featured in that society. It starts out like the 1750s with our main character Chintu, who's like a governor in Buganda, as it was named back then. Now it's Uganda, and apparently there's something to do with a curse upon the family. So that's about all I'm going to say about it right now. Like I said, I'm going to set it aside until July. So I had to look for something else to read. And so I settled on another title, which I'm going to pop up. That is I Wish You All the Best by Mason Devers. So this is another book for Pride Month, and it features a non-binary character named Ben, who has just come out to their parents and has been thrown out of the house. Every child's worst nightmare of coming out to their parents as to how they're going to react. Will they be accepted? Will they still be loved? And I've only just started that. I'm maybe 7 chapters in. I started it last night, and I almost didn't want to stop reading. I just was getting so into the story. The writing was beautiful. I'm just immersing myself in this young person's story, and yeah, it's very, very good. The other thing, I finished my audiobooks when I finished The Deep and I finished Murderbot, so I was looking for something else to listen to, and then the news kind of broke that an author had recently passed away. He was only 55 years old. I'd read his book back when I was still working at Barnes & Noble. In fact, I read like an ARC copy of it when it came out and passed it around, and everyone, myself included, just fell in love with the book. And I'm referring to Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Like I said, he just recently passed away. I believe it's from cancer or something, not a COVID-related death or anything. But Shadow of the Wind is one of my all-time favorite books, and I've only read it the one time. I still refer to it as like an extreme favorite of it. I just love the book. But I've never picked it up again. I've never gotten around to it. So, because I'm kind of tied up with a lot of other physical books, I decided to go ahead and download the audiobook and listen to that. And this is about, it's set in Barcelona, 1945, and we have our main character, Daniel, I can never pronounce these. It's a young boy. He is living with his father. His mother has passed away, and he's very, very depressed. And his father, in a way to kind of cheer him up, takes him to the Cemetery of Forgotten Books and tells him this is a secret place. You must not tell anybody about it, but you're allowed to choose one book and kind of make it your own, to look after it, make sure it's never forgotten. And he ends up picking up a book by Julian Carax named Shadow of the Wind. And he becomes fascinated with the book and starts to look into the history of this author, and there is some weird background history to this author. All of his books seem to have basically disappeared, and there's some belief that someone has been trying to track them down and burn them, and it's a really intriguing, interesting book, and I loved it. So I'm kind of revisiting this again, and I'm just so sad that we've lost this author. I read Angel's Game, which came after this, although they say you can read the books in any order. I prefer to read them in order. And I have the third book. Oh, shoot, I forgot there's 3 or 4 books now kind of featured around the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, but I've never read past 2, so I always said, someday I'll return to this, start this over, and then continue reading the rest of the book. So now's the perfect opportunity to do so. And then just for a little bit of light reading, I think I'm going to be reading some comics. I don't generally subscribe to any. I don't subscribe to any comics, but recently we're doing some inventory while I was back at work, and I had to count comics, and I started flipping through them, and I came across one of my favorite characters, Flintstones. So these are really old classic Flintstone comics. So yeah, I picked up the 3 that I found. I just love the Flintstones. Kind of reminds me of my dad. So anyway, I'm going to be reading some comics. So that's kind of what I'm reading currently. Some Flintstones, Shadow of the Wind, Memento, Mori, and I Wish You All the Best by Mason Devers. So those are the books I'm currently reading. And like I said, Shinto is temporarily on hold till July. But anyway, yeah, I've been quite busy with the books and stuff. How about you guys? Have you been doing a lot of reading? Have you getting back into it? It is super hot out here. It is currently 6:14 and it's like 90 degrees. So I'm going to go in, get a cool drink, and get some air conditioning. Thanks for watching. See you guys later. Bye-bye.